acknowledged as Hollywood's master of the action genre, and perhaps the founder of the true modern-day action movie. We welcome John McTiernan. John, tell us, if you will, where'd you grow up?
Way upstate New York, mostly in Albany.
He says you were out on the farm. You were a farm boy, is that correct?
Yeah. We lived north of the Utica in the Adirondacks.
And
Well, I was about, I don't know, 12.
and did you think at 12 years old you were going to be involved in the movie business?
No, I wanted to be a doctor then.
Because we know that your dad was involved in music, and you were exposed to a lot of those things at a very early age. We just wondered if that was just sort of passed on from generation to generation.
Well, I guess obviously exposure to theater did open or make a lot of things possible.
When one of the things that we know that you did, you went to Juilliard, is that correct? And when you went to a prep school, could you tell us about that little part of your life? I know that's probably before you did much, but people might be interested to know what Exeter was like.
I wasn't the appropriate student. No, let's move on to something else.
Okay. Well, what happened when you got to Juilliard? What drove you from New York, which is your home, and you seem to still feel comfortable in New York, to bring you out to California? What brought you out here?
Oh, I went to the American Film Institute, which is a graduate school. It was in Beverly Hills. Now it's in Los Angeles. It's moved east about 15 miles, but it was in there's a mansion that's in 1 million movies, and the school started there.
Well, who did you?
At the time, it had very few students. It was, I don't know, they took in like 35 or 40 kids a year, and that was all.
Wow. Now let me ask you this: you started from American Film Institute, where you attended. You then went into doing commercials, did you not? About 200 of them. Would there be anything that people might remember that?
It was sort of the other order. It was it was how we paid the rent while I was going to grad school. So I was doing it all at the same time.
Are there some famous ads or?
Oh Lord, no. Ridley and Tony Scott have done famous commercials. I have done no famous commercials.
Well, let me ask you this part. Who did you meet at AFI or in New York that mostly affected your career? Who were the people that really made a difference and helped you along the way?
Nina Foch, who is an actress and a teacher, and Jan Kadar, who's a Czech filmmaker. I worked for him for a couple of years as his assistant at the school.
Now, he's the one that made you memorize all these different movies, the plot lines and everything. Is that what?
No, not the plot lines.
No.
Plot lines are easy. What he used to make me memorize was the shots. He'd say, "Okay, learn that movie." And by learn that movie, he meant you sit down with a bunch of pile of paper and some pencils and write shot for shot the movie from memory. I learned a bunch of movies that way. I learned 8.5 that way, which is a pretty complex film. I learned not Barry Lyndon. Clockwork Orange I learned. His notion was that if you really want to be a filmmaker, you have to get that conversant with the, you have to be able to carry that much in your mind. If you wanted to be a world-class musician, an instrumentalist, a player of something, piano or violin or something, you'd have dozens, maybe hundreds of scores. You'd have hours of music in your mind. You'd never need to look at the piece of paper. All those hours would be in your mind. And you couldn't possibly be good enough unless you had done enough work to put all that music in your mind, so that you would just be able to sit down and call up note for note, some piece of Mozart or one of the classics of your profession. And his notion with me, because the way he put it is, he just said, you have eyes, so you better learn to use them. Instead of thinking of movies as print, which is the way they're always approached, it's a pile of paper. It's a list of events and words that will be spoken. Instead of thinking of movies that way, what he tried to, no, he did. He made me learn to think of movies as a chain of images, where you would fashion the entire chain of images. You just like a music student could hold a concerto in his mind, you should hold a movie in your mind, the images. Never mind the words, the images. Where was the camera for that shot? What kind of lens was it? What was the camera doing on every shot, on every one of, well, most movies have about 1,000 shots. Kubrick's Clockwork Orange has very, very few. It's like 550 or something like that. It's like one of the fewest shots of any major movie.
So he was really looking at the sort of the Hitchcock way of shooting, going through it already way ahead in your mind and kind of staying way ahead of the curve of what, visualizing it way ahead of what actually when any filming was taking place. Is that correct or not?
Yes, but again, much of Hitchcock is a literary approach to it. It sounds like I'm denigrating him, which I'm not at all. But the Hitchcock notion of breaking the action and the events down into a specific chain of written shots of, he looks this way, we cut to the airplane circling behind him, we cut to the bird on the fence or whatever.
Well, how did that affect you?
That's the first step. That's the first step in what Kadar was talking about.
All right, now let's get to something that you were doing while you were working with your Czech, Mr. Kadar, who was one of your mentors, I suppose you'd call it. You also were working on a screenplay for your first movie, which was called Nomads. And now, for the new filmmaker, for those people out there that want to be filmmakers, could you just relate your experience from the first day you sat down to write Nomads until, and give them a time frame from the time you started writing it till the time that you actually started shooting it?
Oh, Lord. Okay, I started in the summer. I started as I finished at AFI. I figured that one of the best routes for a filmmaker to become a professional director is to write. Not because you want to be a writer, but because it's a way to advance your directing career. So I started the summer that I finished. That would have been 81, 82, 81. Wrote the screenplay. I think it got made in 85.
Were you happy with that film when you from your first day in 81, when you started writing it, and in your mind's eye what you wanted it to be, and at the end of it when it actually was released, was that representative of what your initial thoughts were about that film?
Oh, probably. Now, but that begs the question, was I, from hindsight, happy with what my original thoughts had been? The answer to that is no.
Well, let me ask you this. This is another part of the film process that everyone has a tough time with, and that is actually filming it and getting it funded. How did you fund Nomads? How did that process make itself available to you?
I didn't fund it. One of the things that's particularly good about the American Film Institute is that it, for a few students each year, you get incorporated into the professional industry pretty much directly. David Lynch in the class in front of me, Ed Zwick and I in our class.
These are sort of ways to get a grant or a fellowship to get to...
Well, no, you get the grant or whatever, you make a film, but after you've made the film, you're then treated almost as a professional. So that I got an agent immediately, and the agent sold the screenplay in the regular industrial pattern, sold it to an independent producer who funded small movies named Elliot Kastner, who has given a start to a lot of guys, I think.
So you, after some acclaim for Nomads as an independent film, you made one of the most, from a personal sense, the next film that you made was one of the most incredible. They at the time that it came out, it was the most incredible B movie ever made. Actually, it was a fairly low budget. I'd like to kind of know what that budget was for Predator, but Predator was the most astounding surprise for everyone, because at that time Arnold was just out of Conan, and all of a sudden you take him and make him into this superhero, and it was just a spectacular movie. Stands today as one of the best sci-fi movies, a genius that was ever made.
Wow. Well, you're right that it was the intention was that it was an upscale B movie. It was a B movie done upright. And the
well, how'd you get the chance?
The more artsy or esoteric camera style that I brought to it was a good counterpoint to how silly a lot of the goings on were. If you
It wasn't that silly when taken in the context of the great cast that you put together. Who helped you? How did you get that film? How did you get to be the director of that film?
Larry Gordon, who was the head of Fox, saw the movie, and Joel Silver saw it. And between them, they decided to hire me for this. Actually, they offered me the previous Arnold film, which was called Commando, I think. And I turned that down. And then when the next one came up, they offered it to me, and I said yes.
Well, the thing about this particular movie, Predator, even though they credit Die Hard as being the preeminent concept for all action genre films, modern day genre films, it was actually the Predator that was you had the right music, you had the right everything. The pace was incredible. The actors were incredible. You seemed to have put all the pieces together of a puzzle and make something that was totally impossible possible. Did you I know you probably aren't happy with the results of it. No director ever is. They think they can do better, but that was an astounding film.
It's far enough away that I'm happy with it now. It's okay. Eventually, you forgive yourself.
The next one that you did, of course, was the original Die Hard film, and that one's been covered by a lot of people that have interviewed you over the years, and given you lots of credit for that film. Again, I think we're more concerned about how did you get that film?
We had done Predator. It did well. Larry and Joel Silver, Larry Gordon and Joel Silver had this other script that they wanted to get made, and at that point it was no difficult. Was not difficult to get a studio to do the movie. The problem I had was that the script was a terrorist story. They were straight out terrorists, just trying to punish a big company or something, and I asked. I mean, my notion was that terrorism wasn't entertaining, not fun, and that an entertainment movie has to somewhere be fun inside. You know, even an action movie has to have. At the time I was talking about it has to have some joy in it, which was why I picked that particular piece of Beethoven that runs all the way through it, that had been in Clockwork Orange, and I loved it, and I thought it really just expressed the idea. And then afterwards, like an idiot, I found out that the name of the piece of music was the Ode to Joy. But that was exactly what I was looking for, or what I wanted to do with the story was find a way to get some fun in it so that you could enjoy it.
You made a governor with Jesse Ventura with just that one line he had in Predator when he said, "You got a nasty habit there," and that's sort of like the quintessential Jesse. Now, I mean, that's.
I didn't make a governor out of that. Jesse did that all by himself. But the studio agreed to turn it into to twist it so that it wasn't just terrorists. It was terrorists doing a robbery. Because you can enjoy a robbery. You can even like the robbers, and it all can be fun. And that was what I was looking for.
So you've really set the tone, and for just so many action movies that you have not done as well, and by there were 3 Die Hard movies. The second one Rennie Harlan I think directed, and then you came back to do a reprise on the third one. But I think what we're asking here is here's a question we've always wanted to ask John McTiernan. What was the first action movie that you saw as a child growing up that you liked? That you thought was really entertaining, that you would like, in fact, you probably would like to see it again today?
Oh, Lord. No idea, there are too many.
Did you like that type of action movies when you were growing up? Cowboy movies and war movies? Or
War movies, love war movies. The Guns of Navarone, 12 O'Clock High. The Sons of Katie Elder, The Searchers, The Horse Soldiers. Is a John Wayne movie. It's just great.
She wore a yellow ribbon and all those. Did you like that one too?
Yeah, actually, yes, I like she wore yellow, but The Horse Soldiers is better. The Horse Soldiers is a wonderful movie.
Well, let's go to something that's we're going to try to make a little transition here, segue into something that John McTiernan has established within Hollywood, and that is if you have any jungle work, if you have any night work, if you have any bugs or snakes, you probably have the makings of a good John McTiernan film. You just seem to love the jungle. and you just love putting your actors and yourself through just incredible inclement weather. Can you tell us why you like doing that?
I'm going to try. I know your question's 2/3 smartass, but I'm going to actually try to answer it seriously. I like to see. I enjoy seeing some of the power of the world in a story. It's much harder to make something dramatic in a living room. I'm not saying it can't be done. I just, what's it called in Shakespeare? The sympathetic fallacy. That I have sort of, to some extent, cheated and used my opportunities to make movies to go try to record places and things that I was curious about, or that I thought it would be neat if somebody recorded. Most of what we think of as what kids in my generation learn as appropriate male behavior, and the generation in front of us, kind of the pre-Vietnam generation certainly did. Most of it came from John Ford Westerns. And that was the appropriate way for a man to behave. Didn't mean that you had to, but if there was an ideal, it was the way the guys in those films behaved. Not just John Wayne, all the other guys. There was a whole panorama of characters. And many of them were good, decent men who had courage in varying degrees or whatever, but there was a particular style of behavior, of what was decent behavior. And 2 or 3 generations of Americans learned, I think, morality from them.
But did you have to go to the jungle to do that? Do you have to go to those very difficult inclement weather situations to get them to see that in the character of people?
Well, maybe to some extent it's a cheat. Then it allows men to have conflict with something other than other men. If you can have conflict against the world or the environment or things larger than a man.
I'm going to
and that often leads or allows behavior that's more decent than if you get yourself just locked into interpersonal conflict. That leads you to a whole range of really unfortunate things. And it seems to me that part of what movies are about is just transporting you to a time and place that is the way it ought to be instead of the way it is, or the way it would be really nice if it was like that. That there's a fantasy aspect of it, and that fantasy aspect isn't. It's not immoral or politically reactionary to create a sort of fantasy and not quite realistic style of behavior or to represent it. Because what you're doing is representing an ideal. You're representing an aspiration. You're not saying men are really like that. You're saying at their best, we would hope to be like that. And that's a big difference. It's an aspiration, you're not pretending it's a recording. You're not pretending that everybody's really like that, and if you're not, then you're a failure.
Let's follow that up just a little bit, if you will. Politically, action movies have a lot of incredible violence. In most cases, not particularly your films, but others, serious sexual gratuitous violence, a variety of different things that go on in action films. And do you believe that the directors and producers of these films have a social responsibility to make them one way or the other?
I think that's a question that everybody's got to answer himself. I've thought about it and tried to answer it for myself. I don't think any of my movies are immoral. I mean, there's loads of violence in it, but I have always tried very hard to keep some sort of a moral scale running about, well, who gets what sort of violence, and if somebody indulges in criminal violence, does he get punished for it? Is he, even if he gets away, officially gets away, does the movie say that was evil? I try to do that.
So you feel that it's important then to have some sense of redemption to your characters, one way or the other?
I do. But I'm not saying somebody else has to, some other filmmaker has to.
What do you think of the other filmmakers that don't take that into consideration? Do you approve of that, disapprove of it? What would you say?
I'm not going to get into throwing stones about it. It's not appropriate.
Let's talk about some of the great successes and some of the great failures of John McTiernan. You've gotten incredible rave reviews. You get genius, boy genius. You go from boy genius one day to the family goat the next day, and it's really an interesting career that you've had, and it's exciting, I guess. But you've had the incredible successes have been many, but then you've gotten some Razzies here. You got a Razzie for, which one did you get a Razzie for? I think, or at least a nomination.
Rollerball is just, everybody hated that.
They didn't like that one at all. No. And so, did you consider yourself a risk taker when it comes to doing these movies?
I try. I mean, I don't know if. No, yeah, I still take risks. I'm doing a very odd movie right now. It's completely different than anything I've done before. It's probably the smallest movie I've made since Nomads. It's a film with John Travolta and Sam Jackson. And it's not a big action movie at all. It's very different. I don't know. I hope I have the balls to continue to try things. When you stop doing that, well, I don't know whether this is true or not, but one is always told that if you stop taking risks, you'll ossify. And
one of the most underrated movies that you've done that we feel is a major breakthrough movie in an odd way is The 13th Warrior. That was an intense movie. It has been, you've got incredibly mixed reviews. One, of course, some of these people that write reviews we're not too thrilled with, but you've gotten some interesting reviews on that, from being extremely wonderful movie all the way down to, they thought it was a remake of the Seven Samurai, and that we never could figure that one out. But the bottom line is that you did a tremendous job on that movie, and can you tell us why you chose that particular story, and going through that movie, what were the challenges you had to face on that one?
I'd read the book a long time ago and always liked it. I don't know, sometimes I think the ending and the script didn't work. There was a lot of political wrangling about it. I don't know if maybe the movie was advertised as as a remake of Conan, where you want to see a lot of silly swordplay that wasn't realistic. And what I was trying to do was suggest what it might have actually felt like.
Did they undercut your budget on the distribution marketing side of that film, or did they give you the full amount for advertising and so on?
No, I think
They didn't do.
Disney isn't known for being imprudent about things. The other problem, which is it's an institutional problem that the film fell afoul of, was a rating. The studio wanted, I think it wasn't demanded, but it was in the contract, and it was an instruction right from the beginning. They wanted a PG-13 movie. Which has a lot to do with attitude. It isn't necessarily what the violence is you see, it's the overall of how much violence and how much preoccupation with violence and all of that. And then when they got the movie, they decided they wanted an R rating.
Does this happen a lot on shows?
Well, but the same thing happened to Rollerball. They started saying they wanted an R rating, but they insisted on casting a PG young actor, and then decided they wanted a PG-13 rating, and we decimated the movie in order to cut it down to that. And it is a political problem that's built into the industry because of the rating system.
Well, let's get into that part.
In Europe, it works better because they have a couple of finer divisions. Effectively, it's very, very difficult to get a studio now to say that they'll make an R-rated movie because of the limitations on advertising. So you have 1/3 of the studio, the marketing side, campaigning like crazy in all the meetings they have that they don't invite you to, where they discuss you as a future project. You have the marketing people saying, no, it's got to be PG-13. And they may not have even read the script, let alone have any idea what the movie is. But no, it should be. And that becomes a very heavy force to deal with. And it just the way the American rating, where they divide it, is just inconvenient. In Europe, I don't remember what they have 3 ratings where we have 2. And the one in the middle would allow a reasonable amount of semi-realistic violence without it becoming blood-soaked. So in effect, they have a rating in the middle between. Oh, it's a 17. It's rated for 15 or 17-year-olds, 15-year-olds, I guess.
So you'd like to see that here in this country?
I think it would have helped me enormously on a couple of projects, and yes, I'd like to see it in the future here. Because what happens is you get, effectively a PG-13 isn't for 13-year-olds because it's not, they don't test when you go to the theater and you say you're 13, they don't check. Whereas if you want to go to an R-rated movie, they have to check your ID. But they don't check And because they don't check, effectively what they're really saying is it's appropriate for everybody. An 8-year-old can go. So it becomes actually a very restrictive rating. You have to take everything out.
Let's get into that.
The European notion, anyway, of
Yeah.
doing it, making the break at 15. I think does a whole lot less damage to movies.
Let's go there on one of on this one project, Rollerball. Just for this probably is like grinding sand in your shins, but I need to ask you about this anyway. So you didn't get a choice of star. You had to take the star they gave you, or were you involved in that process of choosing the star for that film?
Well, it was sort of.
And the casting generally, that's where I was going with it. Not particularly just the star, but the whole casting.
We shouldn't go into this because it will lead me to have to say things that I'd rather not say, or that I'd rather not have written down.
All right, that's fine.
I can discuss it personally, but there are a lot of people involved who. We should
not go there. Now, okay, let's go to the second.
Here.
Let's go to the second part of that same scenario, and that is on the writing of the actual script writing. Where you, how much energy did you have involved in Rollerball?
Of the original script, a lot. Of what's in the movie.
So
see, the movie was intended to be political, and the action movie was a sequence where it turns into a war movie. The whole notion was that it was Spartacus, that you have somebody who's drafted into the games, and somehow it blows up and he winds up
into a revolt
in a real war.
Yeah.
For budget reasons, we cut the real war and tried to keep it just on the track, which is a terrible decision, and I went along with it. I didn't say, no, I'm out of here, I quit. Which from hindsight, obviously, I should have.
Well, let me ask you this. The things that you've got your best movies ahead of you. I have a real strong feeling about that. That genius that you've had through the years, and the breakthroughs, and the new things that you've brought to the film industry over the years, I don't think are waning in any respect. I just think that you need to look at and say, what's the next project that you want to do in your way? And I guess my question to you is, how do you plan on doing that? How do you plan on taking more control of your own fate here with the new projects?
Very few people in Hollywood have control of their fates. You tap dance through the minefield as best you can, and sometimes you come out great, and other times you come out missing a couple of limbs. I don't know, I'm working on it. There's a World War II piece that I want to get done that we just did the script for this summer. And I'm working on an airplane movie also. I'm working on the script for that right now. And I'm also, we're in the middle of negotiations on a Vin Diesel movie that's a caper movie.
Well, tell me about your team. Do you have a team of people you normally work with, or have you worked with just a whole big vast variety of different people? And that I'm talking about film editors and cinematographers.
I've done many movies with John Wright, although this last movie I used George Folsey as the editor. I use often the same special effects guys. I don't use the same cameraman, although I use the same sort of cameraman. I always get, if I can, a European, always, not just if I can. I always get a European or an Australian cameraman, because they come up through a different industry. I think the learning course for becoming a cameraman for an American cameraman, which is largely determined by the union, doesn't help them become good filmmakers. There are a few guys who have, in spite of what they've been through, turned out to be good filmmakers. But they either came in the door with it to begin with, or they somehow had the chance to learn afterwards. But
What about the music? I'm really interested because I know you have such a strong musical background. Who do you use for the scores and things like in Predator? Who did that score? Do you recall?
now you're killing me. I can't remember his name. Do you remember his name? He's continued to work constantly since then. It's an Italian name. He's very good. I keep wanting to say Steve D'Souza is the writer. You're really embarrassing me.
No, I don't think so. I mean, after all the things you've done, I don't think so. What I was going to mention is, though, that you don't use...
Michael Kamen did the Die Hard movies.
Right.
I usually wind up using a different composer on each piece, depending on what the...
But what I was going to mention is that we couldn't get away from this conversation without talking about something that's affecting Hollywood, the world right now, and you've been well, either involved in it or on the sidelines of it for some years, and that's called the runaway production, they call it, where films are made in foreign countries, and you know, we've got SAG actors that are complaining that, you know, we should be making them here, or whatever. What's your regular read on it? It doesn't matter, but if you could just give
No, it's absolutely... Well, hey, I talk a lot about it. Even though I have worked in Canada several times now, I'm not necessarily in... Oh boy, am I going to get in trouble. Look, the government of Canada runs a predatory trade policy to capture the American film-making industry and move it to Canada. They subsidize the making of films. Among other things they give back to the studios is all of the, they're called fringe costs. In effect, it's the health insurance, it's everything, everything that the employer kicks in on your paychecks. You know, the FICA, the FICA, and the thing, and all those things, all those costs that in the United States you give some, but the employer gives some also, and it's given to the federal government in taxes. The Canadian government gives the studio all of that back, and they give it to the studio. They don't give it to the filmmakers, and it's a straight bribe to the companies that decide. So I didn't go to Canada because, golly, I just had this itch to work north of the border. Going to Canada was what made those movies possible. I'm very disappointed in the unions here because they can't seem to figure out what's actually going on. They're fighting a battle from 20 years ago, particularly SAG is terrible about it. They don't understand what's happening, and they're not capable of marshaling. Whenever they go to Washington, they rant and rave about runaway productions, as if the movies that went and did that were doing something immoral, as opposed to obeying economic laws that were determined by the governments. Right? So all you have to do is have the American government match the Canadian subsidies, and there'd be no such thing as runaway production. But the unions can't seem to marshal a political will to get that done. And Lord knows the studios, hell, they'd send us all to Red China if they could get away with it. You know, they'd be perfectly happy to have, Chinese convict labor making their movies for them, and they'd say, no, you can't have the budget to work with Canadians. You got to use those Chinese convicts. Some of the people who decide where and how movies are made are not, shall we say, gentlemen. Movies go to Canada as a direct response to the economic and trade policies of the Canadian government. If the American government would respond in kind, the problem would go away. But the reality is that much of the industry has already moved there as a percentage, I don't know, 50, 60, 70%. I think it will be very, very rare in the future, unless the government economic policies change. It will be very rare to see movies made in the United States.
One last question, just a question about where we are in this country today, about where, and maybe where you were on 9/11 when the trade towers in the Pentagon were attacked. Can you recall what you were doing and what you thought about it since it happened?
Well, I was at home. What I apparently actually said, and people have teased me about it since, was, hello.
Oh my God.
Come on in, come through, come. Oh well, whatever. What I said at the time apparently was, oh Jesus, there go our civil rights. That in the difficulty of trying to deal with a hostile but loosely defined foreign power, i.e., the hostility of much of Araby, we will, instead of taking action against them, take an awful lot of actions against our own citizens. To wit, every time any one of us gets on an airplane, you usually have to take your shoes off to have them inspected, which is which makes me hate Al-Qaeda just for that, let alone all those thousands of families who lost somebody in the attack itself. I have had to deal with it a little bit in that this movie that I just made, I tried to, we got in a fair amount of arguments about it. I tried to make it politically neutral, or so that it somehow, I don't think right now is the time for Hollywood entertainment purveyors, which is what we are. I mean, we're not philosophers, we just sell tickets to, and bear baiting in effect. I don't think right now is a great time to be terribly critical or to find fault with our government. I don't think this is the same as Vietnam at all. I think we were genuinely attacked and to some extent are threatened. And our government seems to be doing the best they can to figure out a policy to deal with it. It's not like the experience of 30 years ago where we weren't really attacked and the policy was dreadful and needed to somehow be broken. I don't think we've gotten ourselves in that kind of trouble. So being mindful that we are merely entertainers, I have tried to make a movie that's relatively innocent, particularly innocent right now.
I guess that's our last question for you, John McTiernan. Let me ask you this: the social responsibility of filmmaking today, and we don't just focus that on the action genre, but just generally across the board. What is there a social responsibility?
As filmmakers?
You bet.
Yeah, sure, but there's a social responsibility for everybody. Filmmaker or not. You're your neighbor's environment. You know, the way you behave makes the world for the people around you. You create their world. So how you behave is of moral significance. I don't know that whether filmmakers necessarily have more, you know, because their stuff is seen by more people or emulated or whatever. Yes, all those are considerations. But I don't think that it's a matter of degree. It's not a completely different notion than simply being a citizen.
And so that you're saying that would go for the administration of film, of the people that actually, the studios and the studio heads and the people that run their different operations, or should be just as responsible as any of the actual directors and producers of individual films.
Of course they should.
John McTiernan,
and when they fail at that, you know, I was more or less, to the extent I thought about it, this is something we were talking about the other night, but in favor of deregulating large portions of the economy. But when they did that, they should also have put some rules on the individual behavior of people in these deregulated industries. And I think there are a hell of a lot of people in Enron and those other places who are simply thieves, and they ought to get sent to jail. And that's the flip side of a deregulated or a government that tries to leave the economy free. Is you have to put some general rules out there and hold people accountable after the fact, not beforehand, but hold them accountable for their behavior after the fact. I'm sorry, I'm babbling.
not a bit. Let me ask you this:
Yeah, me and Jesse Ventura are going to do a duet.
Let me ask you this: the new movie with John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson is called Basic.
Yes, sir.
And that's the one are you just wrapping that one up now?
Yeah.
And then you've got several other shows that are in the future that you're looking to do maybe in the next couple of years. Is that right? Well, John McTiernan.
Oh yeah, I'm not quitting. That's right.
John McTiernan, we want to thank you, and the American people certainly want to thank you for your ideas and your concepts and all the great joy you brought to the movie public for all these years. And we look forward to your new successes and hope that they're all just as good as The Predator and Die Hard and all the other great movies that you've done. And we thank you so much.
This feels like Woody Allen, you know, when you used to do funny movies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.